What is happening, everybody? I hope you've had a good...
Back in like 2005, something like that.
I think my first con was so good. It's Friday Junior.
It's Friday Junior. It's podcast day. It's payday.
And when you come out, do it electrically. It doesn't matter how you feel about the situation.
My name is Raff. And always, before we start the podcast, because we just want to talk about it. We'll talk about music and just share those stories and experience. This is my co-host, Carl, a.k.a. the BeerBuddy. He is hailing you.
This sort of weird era where they're sort of right in that post-grunge.
Look, you're fighting the good fight in today's world. My war was fought 40 years ago, really.
We are the two dudes who talk music, and we are here. Hey, I'm too quick on that air horn button, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, that is amazing. I love every second of it, dude. Fantastic.
What is going on, everybody? I am the Reverend Raff here once again with my good friend Carl, aka the BeerBuddy. We are the two dudes who talk music, and welcome to another throbbing, just giant, rock hard episode of the Two Dudes Talk Music podcast. It is lovely. It is lovely to see you all again. It is lovely to see you all again. We have Metal to the Max well and truly in our rear view. We hope you enjoyed all of our coverage of that one. And we are looking forward now towards the end of the year. We will be having our usual end of year live stream, so make sure you come along and catch that one. Hang out with us in the live chat. We'd just be hanging out with people, talking shit, doing reaction videos, all sorts of reactions, drinking, having a good old time, just to celebrate the end of another year. So that'll be coming up. We'll have more specifics on that one soon, but keep an eye out for all of that. We'll put the live video up a while before so you can set a reminder and all that good stuff. But yep, we are here for another episode for the podcast. How are you doing, mate? How are you doing this week?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's my little boy's birthday, so happy birthday, Big Hurricane Max.
Happy birthday, Max.
Setting all up for that and stuff like that. So I got mum and dad and that coming over tomorrow. But just been busy with that. But yeah, other than that, a bit... I don't know, a bit sad that Metal to the Max is over, but really excited for what's coming up. And
don't be sad because it's over. Smile because it happened.
Yeah, dude, that's the one thing, like you see.
We can start planning for next year.
Yeah, that's what we're doing, and just everything coming up. Heaps of shows coming up. Got Still Assassins coming up, and it's life is good at the moment. The shows are good. Yeah,
lots of fun stuff. Going? Man, I'm doing all right. I managed to secure some tickets for Metallica. Not the meet and greet that I wanted. Unfortunately, I missed out on the meet and greet. They sell that. They sell. Look, there was a bit of a stuff up on my part. I was trying to log on to see if there was like a queue in advance or something. I got in there. I was too early, so I got to the front of the queue too early. My code wasn't active yet. But because I was in an active session, I had to wait for that to expire before I could get in the queue again. And by the time I got back in the queue again for my actual session, it was I was like 5,000 people back in the queue. Oh. And the allocation was done. The allocation was done for those.
We could get lucky and they could give us an interview.
Mate, I could retire. I'd give it up if that happened. I'd give up the game. That'd be it.
Not for you to retire, but
that'd be it. That'd be it. No. But look, I've still got some great tickets.
Good.
And it got some. Still going to be in the Black Box Lounge. It's going to have a great view of the stage. It's going to be amazing. And it's just going to be a great time all around. So I managed to get my tickets. I know a lot of people are very eagerly trying to get tickets, and there's so many different pre-sales and everything. And look, if you haven't got your tickets yet, good luck. That's if it's not sold out by the time this video goes up. But it is going to be very much the hottest tickets in town, I can tell you that much.
Everyone's going to be dusting off their battle jackets for this one.
It is. And look, that's because I think Metallica is, crossover. I wouldn't say crossover necessarily, but they're a lot more accessible to like the casual metal fan, but also a lot of diehard metal fans are still fans of Metallica. So it's tricky, and there's a lot of people that are going to want to go and see them. So good luck if you haven't already got your tickets, and if they're not already sold out.
Yeah,
all the best.
Yeah.
But mate, look, we're I'm excited for today's episode. I know you are too.
Have we got some royalty in the shit in the show tonight?
Yeah, sort of. I've been just about.
Been around the traps for long enough.
Yep. So today we have with us a very, very special guest coming to us all the way from Las Vegas, Nevada.
Oh,
we are going to be joined by the incredibly talented Aaron Nordstrom from Gemini Syndrome. Now, Gemini Syndrome is a band that's been kicking around for a little while now. I first found their stuff at the early stages of 2020 when I was first starting to work from home during that initial phase of the pandemic.
good time to find it.
All right, found a lot of cool music through that time, and I've been following their stuff since then. We did a reaction to the song that they've recently done, that he recently did with Killer's Confession. Obviously, our good friend Waylon. They worked together on that one. That's.
We'll have a chat about that.
We will have a little chat about that. But So look, we got Waylon, not Waylon. What am I saying? What am I saying? We have Aaron from Gemini Syndrome joining us today. We're going to get into it. Let's go. Thank you very, very much for joining us today, Aaron. Tonight, in your case, we appreciate you taking the time to tune in all the way from Las Vegas. I got to say, man, I've visited Las Vegas a couple of times. How is it to live there? How is it as a place to live?
Well, that's a good question. I think there's a lot of ways to live in Vegas. I think you can live in the casinos, right? You can live in the casinos and bars, drinking and gambling, and that's one way to do it. And you can live kind of on the strip. And then around Vegas, there's a lot of, there's Summerlin and Henderson and Winchester and kind of these other more teetering on suburban, right? That's like a different town outside of the strip itself. So really, my wife and I, we go to the strip when people come visit us and they want to go to the strip. But the rest of the time I live in Las Vegas, it doesn't mean I don't think about the Bellagio.
Okay.
Caesars. To me, it's like the city is 5 miles west of here. So it's really convenient to go to a show if somebody's in town or, whatever, right? Just to go out one night to the city. It's a 5 mile drive, but then it's 5 miles back to my neighborhood, which doesn't feel like I'm in Chicago or LA. There's houses here and stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it feels quiet, I guess. I mean, our backyard is really secluded and isolated. So we have our little oasis here that kind of feels disconnected from everything, which is awesome.
That's cool, man.
Beautiful, man.
Because that's a chaotic city.
Suburbia.
Yeah. It's like I lived in Hollywood and Las Vegas most of my adult life, coming from Chicago, which is another big city. But I've always I feel like I thrive in that, right? Being in entertainment and being in music and having friends that are in the scene and wanting to support and stuff and go out, having access to that stuff, especially when I was younger, was necessary. But it's nice to have found a balance where I can also have my kind of introverted peace and quiet, and then still have the chaos accessible when wanted, right? But if I want to turn it off, it's like a tap, which is it's awesome.
That sounds ideal. That sounds awesome.
It kind of is, man. Because I don't want to be too far away from it, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, there's a last minute. I'm in town and I didn't tell you, even though I've known for 6 months. They're like, oh, we got to rush to go out. Well, it's easy. It's not a big deal. I throw the shoes on and leave, and we'll be back in a couple hours. So I love it. But otherwise, I'll go days without leaving my house at all, man.
I feel you on that. If I didn't have to go to work, man.
But now I work from home, so it's like now I actually don't have to leave ever in this world. If I want to just order groceries and everything else, bring me my cigarettes, and
that's the dream.
Yeah, it's it, right?
So let's obviously thank you very much for taking the time, like I said, to join us for a bit today. Before we get on to talking about Gemini Syndrome, I actually want to go back a little earlier because in the preparation for having you on today, I was doing a little bit of research, doing a little bit of digging, and I was pleasantly surprised to discover that previous to sort of having your own bands sort of take off a bit, you were playing guitar for OTEP for a while.
I was.
How was that?
Pro gigs. That was a really intense, meaningful moment in my life. It was a couple of, just under 2 years I was really in the band. I had moved to Hollywood specifically in 2003 to go to Musicians Institute and chase the dream, right? And go to LA and be a rock star. That was the idea. And a couple of my friends from Chicago kind of moved out with me. We all went together, and they were in different programs, and we did that for a few years. And we had a band that we were trying to get plugged in with in LA, which was, we were young, and I mean, God, it was, what a time. 20 years ago now. It was a different world. It was just huge culture shock. And then my drummer ended up vicariously, the guy that we knew in the building that we lived in had gone to MI before, and he was out with he was filling in for, I want to say it was Chimera on tour. Chimera was out on tour with OTEP, and Darren, the guy that I'm talking about, he had come back and he was like, "Hey, this band OTEP's looking for," and I was a huge OTEP fan. I was a big OTEP fan. They were looking for a drummer, and he subsequently got the gig, and he went and did the Ascension record with them. So his name was Brian Wolf. He was the drummer on that album, and they did that for, I think it was just under a year. They weren't even ready to tour on it yet. I think he had toured a couple tours and then done the record. And my buddy Karma was playing at the time, and he got fired real fast. Him and OTEP butted heads a bunch, and that didn't last long. So I was actually down on one of the lower points of my Hollywood life, where I had just broken my ankle, and my friend had left to go on tour, and my other band I had quit, and I was ready to pack it up and go home. I was crutching to work at MI. I used to work at the school store, and crutching down Hollywood Boulevard as the sun's coming up, hungover, and mad. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. And my phone rang, and it was Brian. He's like, "Hey man, what are you doing?" I was like, "Hating life." He's like, you want a job?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "OTEP needs a guitar player." And it was like divine intervention, man. And I was like, "Yeah, I want the gig." So I started going to rehearsals. I had 6 weeks to learn the whole rig, learn the whole set. And then I was going to rehearsal on crutches, and then eventually a cane. And I started the tour with Static X that year in 2007, like trying to push a road case with my cane. And eventually it was like this, we didn't have a crew yet. I was like, this isn't going to work. So I was, just one of those kind of Grecian tasks from the gods to humans is like climb up the mountain with a broken leg and play the guitar, figure it all out, and don't fuck up or she'll fire you. So it was a huge moment for me, and then I learned a lot of things. I learned a lot about how the industry works. I made a lot of friendships out of that. We toured with Hell Yeah, and I made friends kind of with all those cats, and Chad and I know each other to this day. We both live in Vegas. I met a lot of other people, like my friend Bruce, who's a front of house guy for the Five Finger Camp. He's one of my kung fu training buddies, and he teaches me stuff when I see him. So I've had relationships that have lasted, this 17, 18 years since then. And I learned a lot about how to set my own boundaries, what I won't tolerate, what can make the gig not fun, and what my value is, and how I deserve to be treated as a human being, and then subsequently how to treat the people in bands that I was in going forward. And I've tried to hold myself to what I think to be a higher standard of humanity than maybe some other people I've worked for in the past.
Okay, because because that's it. It can be really hard as a young musician to set those boundaries and realize when that's necessary. Because look, I've been through the ringer on stuff, being in bands with people that I was just butting heads with, that I didn't get along with anymore, that it was just a toxic environment, and we just or made each other worse. And you don't want to, I didn't want to walk away from it, because it's the dream, man. It's what you want to do. You got to suffer to make the dream work, right? But then it's just, as I've got older, I've gone, I should have been out of there well before the point I was, and I should have taken a stand for how I was going to accept being treated and how I wasn't going to accept being treated. And it's sometimes you don't, a lot of these things you don't learn until you've been through it, unfortunately. And
100%.
It's rough, but it's the kind of thing that sometimes you can't explain to people, no matter how well you tell them about it, they can only really learn it through their own experience.
But I think that's it right there. I think that's a really important point about all this, is that everybody has to learn in their own way, in their own time. And the majority of the time that involves you doing the thing, even if that thing is suffering, even if that suffering is its only purpose is to teach you what kind of suffering is worth having. Right, because I think that's the thing you learn is like this type of you got to suffer for the dream. I mean, you do. There's sacrifice that comes in being a professional anything, I'm sure, right? Anybody I know that does other stuff also has sacrifices to make. But the type of suffering of like being mistreated or being undervalued or being overshadowed or any of those things that aren't helping you to grow as an artist, because ultimately we should all be helping each other grow. If we're working together, we should be lifting each other up and not smashing each other down to make ourselves feel better. And if you're in a situation where you find yourself being that recipient of the hammer, like maybe it's time to, stand up a little bit taller and know your real estate.
Man,
but it's hard.
Toxic people like that always get the shits when the punching bag starts to fight back a little bit. That's the only problem. And you start to find out your value in the space real quick. And you find out where you were just the punching bag.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you were just there to make everyone else feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Man, you know what? Sorry, go on. Sorry.
I think that happens a lot. At least I feel like in my own experience, the times that I've been a part of a situation like that, it seems to me that I became that because I was a threat in some way to someone else's ego in some way. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that I wasn't. I was never a threat to anybody in any of the bands that I was in where we butted heads. Usually, I think that was like maybe even subconscious, but like I'm not trying to outshine anybody. I just want to shine together.
Yeah.
And I think it was always something stemming from that kind of foundation that caused those. And, as a younger person, I was way more willing to take it and way scared of confrontation. I didn't want to butt heads with anybody about anything. I wanted to just be a Zen Buddhist master and just float through life like the Tao. And sometimes you can't live that way. It's not always, unless you're on a mountaintop somewhere.
Hey, even the Buddhist monks knew kung fu.
Yeah, so exactly. Yeah.
Well, I mean, speaking of that, that's something that you've been studying for a long time, right? Like 20 odd years. Is it Southern Praying Mantis Kung Fu? Is that the one?
That's it.
So is that a form of, one of the styles of Shaolin Kung Fu, or does that sort of is that a specific thing you're learning? Yeah.
Sort of, yeah. Like there's a few different types of like Shaolin Kung Fu.
Okay.
There's Northern Shaolin, there's Southern Shaolin, and they're distinctively different. You can notice by like really a bigger system and a smaller system. In the Northlands of China, it was drier and more mountainous. So the big sweeping, jumping kicks, the big acrobatic kind of styles made sense there because they had firm footing.
Okay.
In the South, it was more rainy and more slushy and gross. So those techniques don't work. So all of the Southern systems, like Wing Chun, is all of the Ip Man movies, and Bruce Lee's first style was Wing Chun, was created by a woman, right? It's very in close fighting, and it's short footwork because it was built in a place where they needed that kind of technique to stand up, right? Okay. If you're doing big long things in the mud, your center of gravity goes out. So out of those Southern systems, there was a group called the Hakka people. And Hakka means northern guest. So they were people who had lived in the northern part of China, specifically part of the Ming dynasty. They were part of the royal family. And when the Manchurian Revolution happened, they had to flee. And they came down to the southern part of China, and they were kind of hidden away as northern guests. So really, the Southern Praying Mantis system doesn't really have anything to do with the bug, sort of. It sort of does, loosely. Not like when you see Northern Praying Mantis, it's like, it looks like, right? Southern praying mantis, I like to think, is more built on the human system and the most efficient way that the human body works. It's really based on sacred geometry and like geometric patterns and shapes that, like sacred geometry that you would find in esoteric, like religion studies and stuff. Super fascinating to me. All of these systems ended up being passed down through what we know today as the Tong and the Triads and like the Chinese gangs and the Chinese esoteric underworld. It's loosely tied to Chinese Freemasonry, somewhere down in antiquity and the last few hundred years. It's a fascinating art, but the most probably well-known expression of it, if you've ever seen the cartoon Avatar: The Last Airbender from Nickelodeon from back in the early 2000s, there's a character called Toph. She was the blind earthbender. And that character her kung fu is the Southern praying mantis of my teacher.
That is so cool.
He was Sifu Manuel Rodriguez out of California, and he was the body for and the movement. They did all of like the EKG monitors right on it. So all of her movements are actually my teacher.
That's nuts, man. That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's
My dad
unreal.
does a little bit of it. My dad used to train a little bit of like by the sounds of things, with the northern style, because it was always like the big movements and like learning different styles of different animals, and those being an extension of the animal through the movement.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about that. Even systems that aren't necessarily an animal style might have parts of it that are like a tiger form or something, because it's a very aggressive, fire-based, forward-moving, aggressive, ferocious kind of attacking system, right? So yeah, those mentalities kind of play over, and I think the Southern praying mantis uses that mentality in the fact that it's called the machine gun style because it's got a lot of really rapid fire, short power moves, like the bug does, right? And it eats space. It's chew chomp, very very designed to be as quick. It's not flowery. It's not pretty. It was also described as Northern Shaolin in a phone booth. So the principles are very much like the Northern Kung Fu, but then they're like executed in this very short, tiny amount of space. It was designed to be used in like hallways and like very tight, close quarters.
So would that mean you do a lot of the doll work?
I don't do that particular type. We have other apparatuses that we use. I have a bunch of different rings that we use for type that double kind of as an opponent, right? Because I need to maintain sort of this equilibrium of force on the ring to keep it, activated. So stuff like that. We call it the soft ring is the rope is the same kind of thing. And that's used to like develop different types of power generation. There are
where the wooden dummies more for strengthening the forearms and
and I have a friend and teacher who uses that very very specifically that Wing Chun dummy. There's a version of it I've seen like in my teacher's drawings that's like this systems version of it, and it's like it's got this mechanical arm with a weight that comes up from the bottom, so you use that to like called chom or whatever, like you're pushing down on
blocking down.
Yeah, and so there's a counterweight to it, and then the bag, kind of like the rope bag or whatever that you would see on the normal dummy, is up there, and then there's like arms that come up that are spring loaded, so that you're practicing this kind of pulling tension into hitting. So it's similar to the wooden dummy of Wing Chun, but there's like slight differences, right?
Okay.
Same principle to create an opponent when you don't have one.
That's awesome. That is so awesome. I'm gonna look all this stuff up with Dad when I see him on Sunday.
I started my martial arts journey at 14 with Hapkido, and I studied with my teacher Jude, who's passed on, bless his heart. And without him, I don't know how I would have survived. He really taught me kind of a therapeutic martial art. I didn't really learn how to fight at 14 because at the time I wouldn't make eye contact with people. I was super timid and really depressed and anxious and fearful. And he taught me the martial arts as a means to get me to stand up straight and fucking look at people and be confident. And that's what it did. And then I met my Kung Fu teachers, and they were like, I was like, I'm a black belt. And they're like, you're a black belt? I'm a black belt. We should be able to spar. And I just got schooled at the age of 17. And he became one of my best friends. And both of those guys my two teachers have, my whole life just really influenced me, and humility is endless in that. But
Well, I mean, there's
journey.
there's black belts and then there's black belts.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it really means the beginning. Like you're ready to really understand and learn the substance, right?
Yeah.
Getting your black belt means you've understood the foundation of the system. So now that you can actually start to see how the puzzle fits together, it has nothing to do with being ready to go out there and throw them bones or whatever. So
black belt is the professional white belt, because you're starting from scratch again. You've learned all the basics to get to this point, to say that yes, you know everything. Now you're going to learn the real stuff, and that's when you start getting your bands.
Yeah,
it's the difference between knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah. What did Bruce Lee say? Never fear the man that knows 10,000 kicks. Fear the man that's practiced one kick 10,000 times.
Yep.
Absolutely.
It's interesting about him because his Kung Fu journey, he learned levels 1 of 3 of the Wing Chun system and took that. He also studied some Southern Praying Mantis in his time with, his name was Gin Fu Mark. He was very famous in our system. And that's where he learned his inch power from, because the inch power comes from Southern Praying Mantis, that little short punch. So he learned like the basics of all of these Southern Kung Fu systems, and then refined that level 1 into his mastery of his Jeet Kune Do or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's kind of exactly that philosophy. He like didn't learn the whole system, but then he took what he did know and he just obsessed on it for years and honed it and made it work for him. So in the end, he became a master of his own thing, which is the goal of any real traditional art anyway, is to eventually emerge out the other side. And then you, like Zen mind, beginner's mind, you forget all of it and it just happens. You just do it or whatever. It's the magic part, I guess. So I'm told.
Amazing. Well, I mean, that's comparable in a lot of ways to, progressing on learning an instrument and music and things like that, like early on you learn the pieces and you've got to consciously think about the different things, and as you grow on that journey and you go further down that road, you can just do the things without thinking about them. It's instinctual. It's just, it's like breathing, and it just becomes just another part of you that you just are that without having to be conscious and think about it that same way, and I love seeing people progress down that journey. Are you obvious? You're a teacher as well. You mentioned in a lot of interviews and on your socials there. You teach vocals, piano, and guitar. You're a life coach as well. I
say that really. That's what my lessons kind of turn into eventually. Because, and before I even say this, I want to precursor it with a response to your music thing. In traditional Chinese martial arts, there's this thing called the 5 excellencies, and to become a sifu, to become a master, really, in the traditional sense, you have to master those 5 excellencies, and their martial art. Music is one of them, so you have to learn a stringed instrument at that, because it helps for the third one, which is the medicine. So you have to develop the sensitivity in the fingertips to like read pulses. And then calligraphy, and then the abacus, so arithmetic and like fast math. All of those skill sets combined with the Kung Fu allow you to be able to kind of learn all of that at the same time, right? Because you're absolutely right. It's like, it's that journey of mastery that's why I can say that anything is Kung Fu, right? Learning piano is Kung Fu, learning guitar is Kung Fu. It means putting in hard work over a period of time to achieve great skill, is what Kung Fu translates to. So really, web design is Kung Fu, and social media managing is a type of Kung Fu. You know what I mean? Like everything.
If you're really good at it, yeah, that can be your Kung Fu. It can be
if that's your thing, right? If that's what I know, people who do web design who like really get into it, and that's their kind of meditation in a sense. Where I'm like, I do that with Pro Tools. That's my video game now, is like getting into plugins and mixing frequencies and shit. If that's your Zen, if that's your way to do it, and you have to practice it to become better at it, then of course that can be your Kung Fu.
Yeah. It's an amazing way to look at it, and it's I think it's part of it is knowing, gaining an understanding of how much you don't know, getting past that Dunning-Kruger effect of like of knowing a little bit and thinking that means you know everything, getting over that hill to where you understand how much you don't know, and then the more you know, the less you know in a lot of ways. It's just very philosophical, I guess, approach to some of this stuff. But let's talk a bit now about Gemini Syndrome, the band you got going there. Now, Gemini Syndrome's been kicking around for quite a while, and if I could take a moment, I do want to share a story of my first encounter with Gemini Syndrome, how I came across the music. It was early 2020, during the very early part of the COVID pandemic. My company had just said, all right, everyone go and work from home now. And the work laptop, I didn't have any music on there, so I'm like, all right. I'd been very resistant to streaming, so I'm like, bugger it. I'll just get YouTube music and start listening to whatever, and put on the Discovery playlists and everything. And just as a background thing, because I got stuff up here, and it just helps me keep focused if I got music in the background, And Remember We Die comes on. And I was immediately like, it pierced through from just being something in the background. And immediately I was like, this has the vibes of everything that I like. Because I'm a big, like, Kyle and I are nu metal kids. Like, we came up, we grew up with like the Korn and Limp Bizkit and all that kind of stuff, in the late 90s, early 2000s. That was our jam. That was when we were getting into heavy and alternative music. And, Remember We Die kick comes on, and I'm like, immediately like, oh, this is like, I get the vibe. It's a familiar vibe, but it's new and fresh as well. And I was so drawn in by I think there's something very unique about the way you construct your vocal melodies, and the way those songs are put together that just really captured my attention. So I was immediately sort of struck, and I went on a bit of a thing, and I'm like, I just listened over and over and over because I couldn't just get it out of my head. That melody of the chorus in that song just kept sticking in my head, going around and around and around. And like, that was my first encounter with Gemini Syndrome. But like, you guys go back way before that. Like, you guys have been kicking around since like what, 2009, 2010 thereabouts? Is that right?
Yeah, really 2010. We had our first initial meeting in 2009 in, like, I want to say November.
Okay.
And then reconvened in January of 2010. I met the guys. I was on a hiatus out to Hollywood. I had some stuff going on at home where I wasn't back in Chicago. I had moved after the OTEP thing. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do. So I was on the fence about, do I go back to LA and like try to do a band again or something, or do I stay in Chicago and just try to figure out life here or what? And I kind of prayed about it, right? Like, kind of asking God, the universe, like, I don't know what to do, like, hook a brother up. So I went to the bar and back in those days when I was drinking. I went to the bar and I got a little day drunk, and I came back and took a nap, and I woke up to this email on MySpace from the original guitar player. And he was saying, hey, I got this project I'm trying to put together, and a friend of mine that you went to school with said you were in town and you're a singer and you might be interested. And I was like, no way. So I went and met Rich, and I met Brian, and Rich is not with the project anymore. But we sat down, and he had like 14 songs that he had demoed out, and I listened to him, and I was like, these could all be really cool. Like, he's got something, he's got a unique ear, he's writing some cool stuff. There's a pop sensibility to this heaviness that I like, where it gave me room to sing a lot. I was really trying to sing a lot, and they didn't know I could scream until we got in the studio and we were doing Resurrection off the first record, the first incarnation, with Mikey Doling producing it. And he was like, hey, do you think you could do a scream for this part? And I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And I did. And they were all like, you can make that noise? And he was like, can you do like 18 more of those? So then the heaviness kind of got brought in. Anyway, so I moved out in January. I moved in with Brian and Rich. We went straight into the studio with Mikey Doling, who also I had met in my time with OTEP on my first tour. And Mikey was like the first guy who was kind of like, come here, little buddy, I'll show you how to tour. And he like gave me a safe place to run away to on his bus, and we were fast friends, and we'd always wanted to work together. And we'll get into him more with Woyote later.
I was looking at that shirt.
I'm going to be asking about that.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah,
Don't
the
worry,
shameless
man.
self-promotion, it's happening.
Oh, bro, it's all right. This is my band too, so I'm like, I do that all the time, bro.
Awesome. So we did this record with Mikey. We recorded 14 songs in a very, very short amount of time. And he started talking to people in LA, people he knew, and he got our first manager, Rob McDermott, involved. Rob had worked with bands like Linkin Park and Static X, and was
Rob ain't no joke, man. He's a
Rob's my dude. Rob and I are still friends to this day. I love him very much. And our lawyer Eric German got involved like right away, and that was really, all happened real fast. We moved in together. We got Mike and AP in the band like while we were doing the record, the demos, the first thing with Mikey. We all moved into an apartment in the Valley in LA. We started rehearsing 7 days a week. We booked our first show for 6 months out, and we just promoted and rehearsed. We were just getting, merch designs down. We just turned it into a full-time job. And then we started doing grassroots. We had a huge opening show in LA, and then we started doing grassroots touring and started making the small circles further and further away from LA. And eventually we were doing like national self-done kind of tours. We had people in our corner, but nothing official. And then eventually we got the deal with Warner for the first album. And then went in and recorded that with Kevin Churko in 2012. I released it in 2013. And started touring. And then we did the second record with Kane Churko, Kevin's son, and Kevin. And that's where Remember We Die came out. Mm-hmm. And during the course of that record, the first two guitar players parted ways with us, both for different reasons. And so it was the three of us kind of like, well, we just signed this deal. So we got to make an album. We don't know what to do. And I was like, well, I think I know a guitar player. So I played guitar on the album. And then we went out and found these two other dudes, Chuck and Dan, came in, and they're actually credited with playing guitar on the album, but they only did each one solo. But we wanted them to be involved. That was the idea, is that we wanted a band like brothers. That's how I grew up being. Like, I didn't want this manufactured thing, so we were trying to make the camaraderie as best as we could. And Brian and AP and I, for sure had that, and still do all these years later. But it was a long battle to try to find the right people, and eventually Brian was sitting down with our longtime friend and his former bandmate Meegs from Cold Chamber, and they were having coffee, and Brian was bitching that we couldn't find the right guy, and Meegs was just like,
keep on saying this word.
"Can't find a guitar player, huh?"
If only there was a guitar player that knew their shit.
If only. So he jumped on board, and here we are. So fourth record's done. We had life happens, man. Post-pandemic was weird. Getting our team assembled and then disassembled and kind of reassembling it again and figuring out a proper way to release this last record. It's been done for a minute, so know that there is new Gemini music that's ready to be out. Those 3 songs that we released last year are off of this album, and I'm hoping to get the ball moving here soon.
Hell yeah! I'm keen for that, because I mean, look, the more I hear from Gemini Syndrome, the more I like it. It's just one of those things where it's, and I know sometimes words like crossover or accessible are sometimes seen as dirty words by some people, but I think that your vocals, your singing really does sort of lend an air of, people that aren't into like super heavy stuff can still get something out of it. They can enjoy it there, and it really is like, I was just referencing, I think an interview that you did a little while ago, where you talked about Kevin Churko mentioning life metal as opposed to the concept of death metal.
Yes.
And I really think like that. I don't think like that's a very succinct and almost and very, very apt description for what you guys do. It feels, it's heavy, but it is inspiring and uplifting, and it really makes, just at least for me, like I find I put on Gemini Syndrome, and it's just like my back straight, shoulders square, head high. Like, it's just one of those things. It really elevates the soul, man. And I think even the songs, like, you touch on a lot of different topics as well. Like Primordial. You're talking about like evolution, and I kind of almost from that one, and maybe I'm wrong, I kind of get a sense from that song of the idea of like technology as part of human evolution as we go forward into the future and things like that. And obviously, like, Remember We Die being like a key thing of I guess the message of like living your life while you're here rather than, just like letting all this stuff drag you away from that. And yeah, I love it, man. It's so cool. And I love what you're doing with that. And it's just, can't wait to hear the new album when that eventually comes out.
Well, thank you.
Sorry for gushing like that. I didn't mean to.
Hey, it's your opportunity to.
Who doesn't love to hear that kind of stuff about stuff that they created? So I'm here for it, and I'll take it. I had a bunch of thoughts while you were saying all that, and that was really cool to hear. The reality of the music that we and I write, whether it's in Gemini or anywhere else, is that, I grew up listening to a lot of Boyz II Men and playing classical piano and some jazz piano and R&B and stuff. And then when I became a teenager and I got into, I first discovered really Nirvana and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and that kind of stuff. And that led me into Pantera and Metallica. And then that led me into like Dimmu Borgir and Emperor and Marduk. And like, I was a black metal kid for quite some time. And, but then after that, I had a phase where I was really into like Paul Oakenfold. And then I had another phase of my life where I was like really into Porcupine Tree and Catatonia. And I had another place in my life where I was really into Jeff Buckley and really into Elliott Smith and really into Imogen Heap. And I bring those names up a lot in interviews, and Typo Negative along the way. I mean, there's been so many bands and genres that have influenced me on a deep level. Like, not just I like those records, like this, I put that thing on repeat for months and didn't listen to anything else. And all of that's trickled in. So I want to sing pretty melodies because I like them, because I like that part of music. But I also want to capture that element of heaviness that's like Metal for Life, that part of me that will always be that teenage coming of age, figuring out where I belong in the world and pissed about it. There's always going to be that part of me alive too. And I want to capture that as most authentically as I can in the moments where it's necessary in the music. Because the songs are supposed to be about life, and life has a lot of these ups and downs, and there's a lot of beauty in life, and there's a lot of bullshit in it too. So to be able to represent all of those things with equanimity and with authenticity, like that's the goal, that's the game for me.
That's beautiful.
You're appreciating all that, right? Like that's what you're into it for. So then then mission accomplished. So
yeah, like I'm always after something that's like we talk about it regularly in terms of, both on the podcast and in the reaction videos we do to things. It's like metal obviously has a reputation for being very angry music, and it's like all focused on anger and what we're pissed off about and everything. But there is a place for happiness and joy within metal and heavy music. There is that space, There are bands that do that and that engage in that mentality and that approach to things. And it's
in it. It's so I like your wording there. They engage in I'll engage in that happiness activity.
Well,
but you see it all the time now, though. You see it all the time. People are posting up things in mosh pits where, like, people will be singing along the SpongeBob SquarePants or something. It's like everyone's scared of these people, and they have a time of it. Give it
to have fun.
It's a telegraph thing. I always say it's a telegraph thing. It's like a thing of just don't come near me. If you want to, though, I will conversate. But this is just like for those people that make those offhand judgments straight away. That's what this is there for.
Yeah. Go
absolutely. Have your judgment over there, because if that's the type of person you are, I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, it's the defense, right? It's a safety net to just stop that before it even has the opportunity to start. And most people who I think probably listen to metal and heavy music get there because they had some experiences in their life that made them feel unsafe, unwelcomed, unwanted, misunderstood, not understood. And so that becomes our resting bitch face because we had to learn it in the world to survive before we found the community where we were actually safe. And then you go to the shows, you go to big festivals, and that face kind of comes down, I think, when you're in the midst of the people, when you're actually in the shows and in the environment. We kind of let that guard down with each other, right? And then those events become super fun.
You're there with your people.
Yeah, like I had that like early this year, late last year. I kind of like it's something that I found for myself was, that I often found because when you're playing a lot of gigs, it's easy for it to feel like when you're just going to a gig that you're not playing, it's easy for it to feel like work because you're in that space. You're like, oh, I have to network or I have to whatever. But I went to see Mudvayne and Coal Chamber, funnily enough. It was when they toured out here recently, and I think for Mudvayne, they hadn't been out here in like 18 years or something ridiculous. Like it was a long, long time. I had never seen them before. I'd missed out on them in the past. So this was my first opportunity to see them, and I was at the barrier watching the show, and I just kind of had this moment of like, it was just, I'm enjoying this again. I'm loving this again. I'm getting life and just happiness from being in this place and just letting myself enjoy the experience again for what it is. Seeing a band that I've never seen before, that I never thought I'd have the opportunity to see live, getting up to tick that one off the list. I just allowed myself to open up to that, I guess, that side of it, which I feel like I've been I had been a bit maybe closed off to because I get in that work mentality going to gigs, especially when I'm playing at the local level and I'm going to gigs at the local level. It's like, you always have to be on, you always have to network with people because gig opportunities and whatnot, you never know what's coming from it. But going to a bigger show like that for the first time in a while and having the opportunity to just let that guard down and just be in the moment was really special. And I think that's the joy, that's what it's all about for so many people and why we love it so much.
Yeah, and that struggle is real, when you do this actually when you do it professionally in any regard. We just went to the When We Were Young festival a couple weeks ago here, and I had that feeling, and I wasn't playing for sure. Right? I had to like shake that off, and then we ended up watching like A Day to Remember and a couple other bands. My friend plays in Atreyu, so we checked them out, and I felt like I had sunk into what you're talking about, where I was like, I was just at a show. I wasn't there trying to rub elbows and fucking impress anybody. I just wanted to go see my buddy play bass and hang out in front, and it was awesome. It was nice. But it's hard to get in that mentality for sure. Like, oh yeah, I gotta go to work now. Like,
Yeah. I did that one night and then had one too many beers and then met one of the singers from a local band out here called Red Hook that are getting pretty big out here and just, did not go well. It was my night off. I got driven in.
Yeah. But hey, look, it worked out all right because we got to interview.
We got to interview Ned.
We got to interview Ned eventually.
We still got one of them.
So I want to ask someone like Meigs coming into the band who has, been a part of the music business for quite a while, because like Coal Chamber dates back a lot earlier than I think a lot of people recognize. Yeah, it's like early 90s or pretty much for they started, wasn't it? Like they got together. Was it early 90s? I think. I don't know. But
first album came out, I think it was 93. I think it was actually the year before the first Korn one.
Is it that? Or yeah, I guess it was. Yeah, you're right.
Coal Chamber. There we go.
We're very professional here.
Oh yeah, totally.
He's my guitar player. I don't know his stats.
Formed by Des and Meigs in 1992. There you go. Yeah. So like 92 was when they kind of kicked everything off. Like, how do you feel like Meigs coming in like brought like a new level of experience or knowledge to the band that helped sort of elevate things for the rest of you guys, or like not? Was that something that came in with that, or was it just like, it's just another one of the dudes, and it's kind of continued on, down the road as you guys were kind of already going there?
with Meigs has been in our family, if you will, like, or we've been in his, however you want to slice it,
Mm.
a long time. After
Okay.
Cold Chamber took their initial break back in whatever the early 2000s, Brian and Meigs were in a band called Glass Pinata together in Hollywood for a long time. So their history is like super long. There wasn't any of that. And then even when Gemini formed, so I got the Gemini tattoo done uh, right after the formation of the band. And Meigs got his wife's name tattooed on his ribs next to me while like we got that done together. So like he's been the homie.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And like it's funny because I listened to Cold Chamber and my friends were big into Cold Chamber, but it wasn't necessarily my cup of tea back when they were big. My favorite song is Rowboat. I love Rowboat. He's like, like, there's a whole story behind it. I don't even go into it. The point is that like I knew his music, but I wasn't like I don't know. He's just a guy to me.
It's just
He's
a
not
mate.
guy.
Okay.
Just a guy in a band. And so here's our running joke is like, that's Meeks from Cold Chamber. And he'll be like, do you know that's Aaron from OTEP? And I'll be like,
I love that you guys can mess with each other like that. That's great.
So great.
That's so good, man.
so it's like, yeah, there's an element of his experience. You know what Meigs has brought to us was like Meigs he's been on that upper echelon, right? He's been at that place, and Meigs knows his worth. And Meigs knows that he isn't getting treated properly or when the band isn't getting treated properly. And I think he taught us that. He taught us a lot of like, you guys are like, why are we tolerating that?
Okay.
That's intolerable. And we were just used to tolerating that because we didn't know any better. And I think that's part of the reason why we're kind of taking this little break right now. I think we all realize one of the things that AP said on a group call some time ago, probably almost a year ago now. He was like, guys, I'm going to do my guys, we have been saying yes to everything for 15 years. It's time to say no. AP's from Milan, Italy. I do a really good AP impression. But he was right. He's like, we've been saying yes to everything for our whole career. Yes, we'll do it. Yes, we'll do it. Yes, we'll do it. Yes, we'll do it. We didn't care. And this ties to I think something you kind of said earlier in the way beginning, maybe even before we were recording, is like you get in this like mentality, like this is it. I got to do it because if I don't do this, then maybe it won't happen again. Maybe this is that thing that I don't want to miss my opportunity. Everybody says not to miss. And by doing that, you end up taking everything, even if it's not a good opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I think that put us in a particular place where, people just knew that we'd tolerate and accept, probably take that much money for a gig, or we'd tolerate writing like that or traveling like that, or we would tolerate that kind of behavior from anyone. Right. So it's all a learning ground here in this school of life. And Meigs was definitely, I think, a huge part of us helping to like level up in that and say we know our worth. And be willing to fight for the things that are worth fighting for, and be willing to walk away from the things that aren't.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you're able to bring, someone to the fold who's, able to provide that kind of perspective. Because I think he's been, like you say, he's been way up at the top of the business, and he's been way down and done kind of all different levels of it. And it's one of those things where having that kind of knowledge can just make a huge difference. And it feels like, like you said, it's allowed you guys to kind of take this step and go, all right, we're going to let things sit for a bit, and then we're going to properly plan what we're doing next and come back and say yes to the right things and make the opportunities that way, rather than saying yes to everything through fear of missing out on things, and it's so crucial. It's so crucial.
We burned out that way, right? We burned out by saying yes. And I think by the time we got done with our touring last year and we came home, we kind of, our whatever team we had kind of disassembled, I think mutually on all fronts. And we just kind of like, we just stopped releasing songs. We were like, we're not ready to. And nobody had the energy. I mean, I didn't turn my computer on for a month when I came home from the last tour we were on. I was so burnt out.
Wow.
I didn't open up Logic or Pro Tools. I didn't pick up a guitar. I didn't play the piano. I didn't for a month. For me to not play at all. I mean, I've been playing since I was 2. It's a part of my existence on a day-to-day basis. So I was burnt. We were all burnt and frustrated, and it's a hard industry. And we've lived through like, the Spotify revolution and streaming revolution, and there's been a lot of challenges along the way. There's been a lot of times where I think we all kind of wanted to quit, give up, and then there's always Papa Kevin Churko in mind, who did Lux, and I always say this in interviews because I like shouting him out because I love that guy. We said, "What's the one piece of advice you would give anybody?" And he says, "Last man standing wins." And I meditated on
Man,
that
ain't
for
that the truth?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
12 years later. I've been meditating on that. It's like the only way to guarantee failure is to quit.
Yep.
oof, oof.
Yep.
Man,
So
man,
I'm taking a hiatus. We're taking a break. I'm doing the solo tour thing. I've got Woyote that's as busy as it can be because we live in separate continents. So that's a challenge too. I've got, I'm learning how to mix and engineer. I've got a couple projects I'm working with people on. I've done some features this year with Waylon. I did a feature with Fear of
that
Water.
was so cool, man.
That was a very, very
that
cool
was
song,
a very
man.
cool feature.
And
Yeah,
the
thank you.
voices mesh so well too, man. Like it's a great fit.
We knew that was going to work. We've been wanting and planning that for a long, long time, and we had it finished about a year ago.
Oh, wow.
And so we had to keep the lid on it, right? And that was real hard because we were excited, man. Like our voices do sound really good together. They're almost indistinguishable at times. And he's another guy who I met very much like Mikey Doling. I met Waylon on our Gemini's first national tour. It was with Mushroomhead, and Waylon immediately was like, he liked me and he took me under his wing. They invited me up to sing with him every night, him and Jeffrey back in the day. And I was green all over again. It was my first national tour, but now this was my band. Now I was the singer. It's a different world than being a hired gun in OTEP's band. So the game had changed, and we became fast friends. I love him dearly, so I'm happy to. I've gotten to work with all those guys that kind of helped mentor me back in the day. I've band with Mikey. Now I'm touring with Waylon. I've got a song with him out there. I'm really excited about what we're going to do in December. I think that's going to go really well.
Because they're doing a whole tour and you're going along with that, doing a acoustic Gemini Syndrome set and hopefully getting up and doing the new song with him as well.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting because I'm main support. So I'm like right before him. And there's 2 other bands. There's Under Black Sky and Lilac are coming out with us. And those guys are like they're heavy bands. So it's going to be like heavy band. Hey, everybody. How you doing? We're going to chill out for about 30 minutes now. And then it's going to be crazy for an hour and a half after I'm done.
Hell yeah.
One of my favorite sets was an acoustic set from Stained.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They came out to Australia one year and managed to jag some tickets to that. And it was a real small venue too. It was probably like 200 capacity. It was the old Red Room, the place with the mirrors on the roof.
Yeah.
You remember that joint?
I know the one.
Yeah, it was one of the best shows. I would love to see that.
Yeah, I mean, so I've been wanting to do this part of the game of my expression, I guess, for some time. I started as kind of a solo singer-songwriter type, if you will, when I was young. That's how I was writing guitar chord changes and writing melodies over them. So this is kind of full circle for me back to where I started from, and that feels good. It feels natural. It feels like a normal progression, and it feels like there's space to do it right now because Gemini's kind of taking its time right now to do it, to heal, to recover, if you will. But it gives me a chance to kind of spread my wings, and I have music that I write, man, that isn't Gemini music, and it isn't Woyote music. It's my music, and it's never going to be for those bands. And I wanted a place to release that stuff at some point. And this opportunity to tour kind of made that happen. Waylon wanted me to come on the road so that I could do voices, and I wanted to go with him too. I'm like, but we got to make it worth it for me and you. because I can't expect you to pay me to come on tour to sing one song with you. That's ridiculous.
Hey, if you can get it.
How do we make?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't, even if he had it.
I know.
wouldn't.
He's your friend.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't, even if he was, even if we had just the biggest budget in the world. I don't know if I mean, maybe.
I get you.
It's nice to go out and do the thing, right? So it gives me a chance to kind of step on stage by myself and brave that, whatever that's going to be like. But I'm going to do mostly Gemini stuff. I'm going to do probably one song that is an acoustic version of something I've been working on in my own time. I'm going to be launching anything that I launch personally will be under this moniker of Mannequin, spelled Manakin, like mannequin. So Mannequin Music will be kind of the platform I start doing this stuff. I'm going to debut a little bit of that on this tour, but mostly a Gemini set. Doing splitting between piano and guitar. The set's coming along nicely. I'm super stoked about it. I'm really excited. I think it flows really nicely, and I think, we've always done the acoustic VIP meet and greet thing. I never wanted to just do a hi, I'll shake your hand and take a picture for $75 because I'll do that for free. So I like to offer some sort of service or something. So we would always do like 3 or 4 acoustic songs after the shows when we were able. And people love that shit. They think it's the best part of the show, and it's my favorite because it's so low impact on the voice. Honestly, it's like easy. It's really easy to play and sing kind of in my normal speaking register, and it's really it's fun. And I can, when I do pull the trigger on a big vocal part, it's like I don't have to worry about the 20 seconds after that. I can just do the part and then come back kind of into a chill place, and it's just real fun, man. I get to kind of be comedic if I'm feeling the mood, and banter back and forth.
Yeah. There's a point of vulnerability, I think, that goes along with an acoustic set, especially when you're in a heavier band and you're doing that stuff on your own, because you got the lights, you got the music, you got the big sound. It's it's huge. Yeah, it's just everything. When you strip it right back, it's almost like it's on the grandpa's guitars.
Well, this is the thing. Like, I saw this comment made in regards to Seven Dust, but I think it applies across the board with heavy music, especially, which is
Seven Dust
a key indicator of good songwriting is, can you strip it back like that? Can you take what's there and write it? And I think that's one thing that Seven Dust has always done really well is all of their songs. Like, I feel like, and I don't know their writing process, but I feel like they almost start with the like acoustic sort of version and then go, how does this work heavy? And then they make a heavy song out of it. So like everything just works with a stripped back version, and like, I hope some sort of video comes out from the acoustic set on this tour, because I want to see that shit. I want to see what you guys are doing.
Yeah, I would love for that to get released on the Gemini. Sure. Oh, jeez.
I'm sure video will come up of it from the tour for sure. The idea, right, is that we want to try and see how this does. I think it's going to do really well. It's a short little 15 show run on the East Coast. The idea is that if it does really well, we could take it to the West Coast. If it does really well here, maybe we could take it elsewhere. Because again, I love doing the Gemini stuff, and I love doing my own stuff too, and I can do them both. Aaron Lewis, I hate to say it, was an inspiration in a sense, or at least like a study material for the way he did what he did with his solo stuff. And Corey Taylor's done it too. Just for the record, it's not like I'm quitting Gemini Syndrome. It's not like that band is done. I want to make that clear for anybody, because there was people worried when I started Woyote. Is Gemini done? No, man, I'm just not monogamous with my musician friends.
No, you don't do what Aaron Lewis did and make a country album and.
No, you know what I will probably do though is release some more electronic kind of music down the road. Kind of that stuff that I love. I love writing kind of trippy, trancey, almost trip hop, like Portishead meets Massive Attack kind of stuff. That's like, I'm getting chills talking about that, because that's another part of my music that it's a passion. It's a part of me, man. I love that style of stuff. And we could do a remixed version of Gemini. We've talked about doing it, but even what I want to create electronically, the music that I do write that's electronic in nature isn't even like that. It's not, it doesn't fit into a metal remix world. It's just not metal. I mean, it's just not. It's a different thing. It's a different style, and it's going to appeal probably to a different audience. I mean, maybe probably some of our fans will be into it. I would hope, but the idea is not that necessarily the same target audience is going to be into all that stuff, and that's okay. They don't have to be, but I'm doing it for me more anyway. You know what I mean?
Well, you have to. You have to do it for you first. It's if if you're not enjoying what you're creating, ultimately it's not sustainable. You have to be able to, when you're enjoying it and allowing that expression of those parts of yourself to come through, it creates more meaningful and soulful music that connects with people because they get that connection from you. And that is just, that's where you get the chills from. That's where you get the moments where, you'll be working on your own song and listening back to it, and you'll get, you'll get the goosebumps, and you can feel that, and you're like, that's something special, because that's going to awaken it in other people.
I just did a song with this guy named Paul Byrne. He was a guy who had reached out to me and asked me to write vocals for one of his songs, and I kind of quoted him a price that I quote for that kind of thing, and he doesn't have a band, doesn't have a label or anything, and I was like, there's no like other incentives, so the price is the price, and that's what it is. And he's like, I don't think I'm gonna do it, and he came back a few months later, and he's like, I'm gonna do it. He's like, I'm gonna pull the trigger, and he gave me a deposit, and I was like, okay. And I had already listened to his music, and I loved it. I built a session real quick, and I sat down and listened to it, and within an hour, I had a verse and a chorus sent to him, and the song was written in 4 or 5 days, and it was one of those first times where it's definitely, it's more kind of prog metal-ish, Degenti in a sense, like Tesseract-y world. And I love it. I love this song, and I was crying tracking it. I was in here, like listening back to the playback. Like, I can't believe that I got this opportunity to write this tune that sounds this way. And then it was just inspired. It was one of those moments, kind of like the Third Degree record was, where like those songs just came out of me like vomit in a sense, right? They just didn't stop until they were done. And I sat back, and like not a lot of time had passed, maybe a day or two, and the song was done and produced and at least recorded. So I'm waiting. His engineer is plugging all of my vocals into that session and mixing it down. I don't know when that's going to come out, but I think him and I are going to do some more stuff on the side too. I just want to. This is the first public talk it's just kind of this other expression while I have the time to do it. I told a few people this back in the day. I said, I want to be able to release as much as I can with whoever I can, if it's worth doing, before I can't anymore. I don't know how much you found in your digging, but I was a pretty heavy drinker up until 5 years ago. I stopped drinking. In that time, I coded. I died at least once clinically. And then 9 months later, I had a heart attack. I had a stent put in. That was 6 years ago now. I'm in the best health I've ever been in. Let it be known. But the reality is that as far as I'm concerned, I'm on borrowed time, man. So I'm lucky to be here, and I want to release whatever I can. I don't always have, I think, the luxury of saying, well, let's wait and formulate the perfect marketing strategy with Paul to release this and coordinate. I don't think I have that kind of time, man. And I don't think the world operates that way. It's not the 90s or early 2000s where we have everything's so immediate now. I just want to get this. I want to get this shit out and just have it so people can enjoy it. At this point, it's a labor of love. Music has to be at this point. If you're in it trying to make money out of it, then I think you're in it for the wrong reasons. And I think somewhere along the ways, I wanted to make money out of it, and that became my expectation, and I was disappointed because it's hard to make money out of it. And so then it was like trying to play the game of making the labels happy and getting the right radio song to hit. And how do we play the social media game to get our numbers up? And you know what, man, I'm doing the best I can, but I'm not the best at all of those things, and I recognize that is one of some of my weaknesses. So at this point, I'm just happy to put the music out and let people listen to it. And if the reward comes after that, follow your heart and the money will follow you. Is my kind of new philosophy in the game. I just want to write and release if it's good material. And the stuff that I did with Paul is fucking, it's epic, man.
Well, you're gonna have to keep us posted on that, please.
Yes,
please,
definitely.
because we love anything different. Like, I know growing up, both Raff and myself, we sort of fell into that stagnant thing of when you're growing up and you're the staunch defender of metal and that's all you listen to, and you don't. It's weird. Some people age out and they just completely forget about metal, but a lot of us sort of move around and, it was all, unless they're screaming it and I'm not listening to it. And then I found Breaking Benjamin and stuff like that. And that was a whole new world for me. And then I fell in love with Stained, and it was just a whole thing. And it's such but even like going to, I used to be a Disco Biscuit bunny, and I used to love going to all the DDM clubs and stuff like that. And all it was, I think the main thing that I wanted to get out of anything was just I wanted to feel it, and just certain people just make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you want to feel it.
Yep.
That's absolutely it.
Well, so you're wearing the hoodie. You've been mentioned a couple of times as we've gone through. Tell us a bit about Woyote, what's going on there. I checked that stuff out. It's very cool. It's a bit different to what you're doing with Gemini Syndrome. Like what for people who maybe aren't aware, what's the deal going on with Woyote?
So Woyote started, I want to say 2020, maybe 2019. Excuse me. I think 2020. Anyways, during the pandemic, Mikey Doling, who I mentioned earlier, we've been friends forever. And when we did the record originally with Gemini, we became even closer again because we toured together and stuff. And then we started hanging out all the time in LA. Like, we both lived there at the time. We spent a lot of time together. And we always wanted to work together in some capacity. And we're like, someday, I don't know how, but it's going to happen. And so he called me one day out of the blue. And I answered. And he's like, hey, man. So he's got this band Channel Zero that he's been playing with for a long time out in Belgium. They're kind of like the national pride of Belgium's metal scene. They've been around a long time. They're icons over there. Cool band. Been around since the 90s for sure. They kind of started out thrashy, kind of a thrash metal-ish band. But they'll headline Alcatraz and Grass Pop. They've done big things over in Europe. They just never quite busted over the pond. Anyway, Mikey's been playing with them since like 2009 or so. And along the way, he met these other guys who were a little bit younger than me, more like closer to 30, early 30s. One of them was and is his drum tech in that band. And then these other guys that were just kind of part of that family over there. And the one guitar player, Yari, had this, he wanted to make a record. He wanted to make a band and make an album. And Mikey and him got close, and Mikey was like, I'm gonna help you try to make an album and put the thing together. And they, the rest of the guys kind of congealed, and they had this other singer that they were working with, trying out, and he didn't quite work out. He had like almost all of it, but not quite all of it, everything they needed. And somewhere along the way, though, Mikey was like, can I be in the band? Instead of he's like, I love this stuff. Can we try to make this happen in Belgium? Like, just build this band. I'll live in the States. You guys all live here. This will be our home base. We don't try to make it in America. We don't even think about America. We just tour here. We just do something over in Europe. And then he's like, I know this guy. I can give him a call. And they were like big fans, Gemini, or at least Yari was. They he knew. He's like, no way you're going to call Aaron. He's going to call back. And I was like, yeah, totally. Let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens. Chris Collier was doing the first record. He lives here in Vegas, which is super convenient for me. And him and I become buddies ever since. I really enjoy working with him. And we did a couple songs that they had with the old singer. I was like, well, let me just do those tunes and see what you guys think. If you like it, we'll move forward and I'll write the rest of the record. And they liked it. And here we are. So we did an album. I just recorded 2 songs maybe a month ago now with Chris. So we've got 2 kind of in the can, just waiting on final mixes and figure out what we're going to do for content to release that stuff. But we got new music coming for that. I think Mikey's coming out here before the end of the year to record. He's going to try to do 4 more maybe. So we'll have, like an EP's worth of new material probably spring of next year. I fly over there a couple times a year. I've become real close with those guys. I love all of them. They're all super unique, awesome personalities. It's such a culture shock to go live in Belgium sometimes for a month at a time. I'm at level 18 on my French now in Duolingo, so I'm getting to the point where I can start communicating with at least half the people in the country. Dutch is a challenging language, so that'll be next. But yeah, we have a really good time. The Channel Zero camp has been really helpful with us. They've been really supportive, and they cross promote for us, and they've hooked us up with a couple shows here and there. They let us open for. Most recently, the last show we did was a big festival out there called Lokersen Feesten. They have these like 10-day long parties in Europe, all over Belgium for the summer. Like a town will shut down for a week and a half, and they'll set up hundreds of stages and food setups and beer everywhere, and they just party for 10 days, and there's music everywhere, and you just walk around and wander around. Nobody goes to work, lives there. They all take their vacation. So this was one of those festivals.
I got to go to Belgium. Jesus.
Man.
Belgium's awesome, dude. Belgium's awesome. And one of the days was the Rock Day, and it was The Warning, who I'm friends with at this point now, was playing over there. So we got to hang out.
Yeah, I think we did a reaction to one of their songs. That's the sisters, yeah, from yeah.
They are bagging. They did the track with Bandmate, didn't they?
Bandmate as well, yeah.
Yeah, they're good. They're good people. They're crushing it right now. They're one of the crew guys was our original Gemini's first tech ever that we ever hired. He's now gone on. He's like their personal dude. So he's out there crushing it. But it was them and Korn. I don't know if you ever heard of that band, but Korn was headlining. So
I might have heard something,
Yeah, Woyote opened for Korn at this festival, and that was, to date, we've played Alcatraz Festival over there. We played this Asgard Festival, which is kind of this Viking themed festival this last trip over. So yeah, we're making progress over there. It's hard because we're not there all the time, right? Because Mikey's here, or I'm here, and he's in California. We can only go over a couple times a year, and he's juggling that with his other band over there too. So we're trying to schedule all that stuff. It's a challenge, But when we started it, it was for the joy. Again, he's like, we're not going to write to try to get signed. We're not going to try to get on the radio. We're just going to write songs we like. And I was like, cool, that sounds awesome. And we're still doing it.
That's great.
It's music.
It is. It's so good.
It's so good. Yeah, it's awesome.
We'll have links for anyone that's interested. We will have links down in the description there to check out Woyote as well, because it's great music, and it deserves your time and attention for sure.
I appreciate that. I think it's different. I think it's different enough from the Gemini stuff. That was one of my first concerns, and other people that in my circle were like, are you going to spread yourself too thin? Is it going to sound too much like Gemini? And I made a conscious effort to sing differently, as in some regard, as much as a human being can. But I think the music is drastically different, right? I don't think that, other than my voice being consistent between the two, I don't think they sound remotely like each other. Mikey's got a very unique guitar style. All the tunings are different. We use different producers. The mentality, even, it's like it just sounds more European metal to me than Gemini does. Gemini doesn't have any Euro metal vibe in my book, as far as it's more new metal-y and maybe like on the edge of techno metal or something sometimes. But Woyote's not that at all. It's super organic. There's 3 guitar players, you know what I mean? We're doing guitar minis and shit.
Guitar minis, I love that. I
haven't never heard that before. That was
it's when the guitar players are harmonizing and they're all making the same. I'll sit back to the back of the stage and watch all the string players up there just rocking out, like guitar miniing it up.
That's sick. That's sick.
Next time I ever see a band and they thrash out and they're doing it real, that was great guitar minis. And they're either going to get insulted or they're going to laugh.
I love that. All right. Well, before we wrap up the podcast and move on to our other segments that are going to come out in a couple of days after the podcast itself, we got a question that we've been trying to answer over the course of this year. And I feel like you've been we get a lot of Australian perspectives on it because that's mostly who we're interviewing is Australian bands and artists, and we'd love to get we want to also get the perspective though from everyone that we're interviewing at the moment. And the question is, in your view, who is the big four bands from the nu metal era? So they don't have to necessarily be nu metal bands, but bands that really came to the fore in the nu metal era. Who, in your mind, who is like the enduring big four of
Rushmore
of that
that are still doing it?
I mean, it still doesn't. They don't have to still be doing it. It can be really like however you view it. Just who do you think is kind of in the way that like Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax are considered the big four of thrash? Like what would you consider to be the big four or the Mount Rushmore from that era of metal?
I mean, I think Korn has to be one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Respect.
I just think they have to be. I think Korn has to be one of them. My knee-jerk reaction is to say Korn, Limp Bizkit, Tool, and I'm not sure who the fourth one is. And even Tool I was hesitant on, but I think Tool fits into that time frame. They weren't nu metal per se, but they're the goat. Maybe Disturbed.
I mean, a lot of bands. The thing that I often say about that era is a lot of bands that now aren't called nu metal were lumped in under the nu metal label because there was just this explosion of diversity at the time and people didn't really know what to call it all yet. So it all just kind of got called nu metal. And a lot of the bands that were called nu metal at the time, they sound nothing alike. Like you talk about thrash bands all have a lot of similar vibes, a lot of similar stuff going on. But, like Korn and Limp Bizkit you talk about, they even them, they do have, there's eras where there was rapping on, some of Korn stuff as well, but really they sound very, very different. And so,
I agree.
A lot of bands, and even like I think it's like at least over here, Slipknot were getting lumped in with nu metal, and Marilyn Manson was getting put in there, and Disturbed, and all of these bands they sound very, very different.
It's tough. Like Slipknot's, I put them in just like metal. You know what I mean? Like they're in the same category as a Pantera to me. And I almost feel like maybe Disturbed ends up there for me too. Like Disturbed and Slipknot have a category that's somehow separate from Korn and Limp Bizkit. That's tough.
It's a tough question.
Yeah, because then you say Slip. I mean, then it would have to be probably like Korn, Slipknot, Disturbed, and Tool for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then Cold Chamber in a sense, I mean at the time, who was more nu metal than them?
Mm-hmm.
What about Drowning Pool? No one mentions them.
I mean, Linkin Park comes up as well, even though they were a bit later in the day.
How do you not say Linkin Park then?
Exactly. But this is the thing. It's like I guess my social experiment when I go out with metalheads or I'm at a concert is this is my whole theory on it. If you go up to anyone and ask who the big four are, you'll get 3 out of those big 4 and one will always be different.
Yeah. I think that's pretty accurate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of when I'm graphing the results on this, I'm putting it all into a thing and graphing the results, and at the end of the year we're going to unveil what the results are. But let me tell you, the curve starts like this.
This is actual research. I love that. Has Incubus made that list? I'm trying to think of other bands from that. Like Incubus was huge.
Once.
Only once.
Yeah.
Once.
Hypo Negative.
I think they.
I don't know if they've been mentioned or not.
Because I don't think of them as a nu metal band, but they were certainly influential on me at that time. Fear Factory, do they get lumped into nu metal? Snot's another one. And I was going to say with Snot and Drowning Pool had the unfortunate accidents that they did, and that's why those bands. That's why we have to question. I think if they had had the grace of things had been different, we'd be telling a different story about them.
Well, that first Snot record, like you go back and listen to that, because I was very late to the party on Snot, but I went back and listened to that album for the first time, and I heard so much that had come after. So much of what came after those guys was like distilled in that first album, and I'm like,
Yes.
I can
And,
hear everything that's been inspired by that afterwards.
it's interesting that Mikey will tell me the stories of when they were coming up, right? Like they were playing with System of a Down. There's another one. How do you not put System of a Down in that list? But they were playing with, I mean, all those guys, all of this Cold Chamber, even opening, like doing local shows with like Pantera and stuff. Korn, they playing these little clubs in Santa Barbara together, and like Korn was opening for Snot, System of a Down was opening for Snot. And it's crazy to think about. I remember when I first started playing guitar and getting Guitar World magazines, that Snot was on the cover of one of mine, right? And it's also interesting to note that all of the people who I've become close with, I wasn't huge fans of their bands as a kid. Meigs, Mikey, even Ivan, like with Five Finger Death Punch, I was a bigger fan of Motograder than I was Five Finger when they came out, and I told him that to his face. But it's like, I don't know, all these guys like, yeah, you're just my homies. Your bands are cool, but they weren't like my freak out bands. It's just, I remember specifically Mikey and Lynn. I think Lynn had this crazy colored hair, and I was like, that's a weird name for a band. Like that's like, it got my attention. But that was in the very beginning of that whole revolution, man. So those guys were all kind of integral in the whole game. And I don't think people realize I'm making a really long-winded point out of what you said, that people don't realize what influence they really had on that scene back at that time.
No.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
and the unfortunate thing is some of them will. The unfortunate thing is they never will.
Yeah. Like I think you check out that second album or that tribute album where they got so many different people to feature on it to do vocals on the different songs. And, I think that kind of gives you a semblance, I think, of how many people were touched by what the band were doing and inspired by everything, and were such good friends with all of them. And that gives you, like, I think, a little semblance of it. But it's the kind of thing that, for obviously people that were in it at the time, they obviously understand it a lot deeper than someone than people like, like we're over here in Australia, like there's a lot of stuff that's behind and removed. We don't get a lot of, there's a lot that we kind of miss out on this. Well, back then, now with the internet being what it is, it's a bit different, I guess. But back then it was, we didn't find out about, like, Korn didn't take off in Australia, and we didn't really know about them unless you were right in the metal stuff and going and getting the things every week and all this stuff. Like, if you were just kind of like us, starting to discover heavy music and learn about that, like, it wasn't until Freak on a Leash came out and that they just exploded, right? And that was that they were in the charts over here. They were like, there's a weekly like a video clip, music video show on our like public broadcaster called the show's called Rage, and it has like thing, and every Saturday morning it's the top 40, and seeing, like, nowadays you just won't see it, but back then, you're getting like Korn and Limp Bizkit and videos on the top 40 on the Saturday morning. It was like, that was unreal. It was just
sitting there
didn't happen.
Down on my Cocoa Pops.
Yeah. Anyway,
watching that mad animation, that was cool, man. What a time to be alive.
Yeah, absolutely. But look, we'll wrap up the podcast portion for now, and then we'll move on to the other bits. But look, we're gonna have links to all the Gemini Syndrome stuff, all the Woyote stuff down there. We'll try and have links to the tour that's coming up as well, because this will be going out mid-November, so people can still hopefully get tickets if they haven't sold out to the shows on the tour in December that you guys are doing. And I mean, look, we'll continue on with the other stuff in a moment. But look, thank you so much for chatting with us today. It's very, very much appreciated. And
I'm happy to be here. I appreciate the invitation. When I watched your review of or your reaction to Voices, the thing that struck me the most was how insightful you guys were about the video, about the concept of the song, and then about how, like, there was one particular moment where you were talking about the interplay of the two voices throughout the song, and how we didn't do this thing where, I feature the second verse. Yes, that's true. But there's a dance happening. It's a duet. It's not a feature. It's a duet. And that was our goal. I didn't want to do a feature. I wanted to do a song with Waylon. Like, we're going to write this thing from scratch. We're going to write it together. It's his concept, it's his band, and I put myself in that place as best as I could. But the music itself was designed like I was playing the role of rational thought, if you will, to maybe answer a couple of those questions. Like the guy who suit is I'm the guy saying like, you don't have to kill this fool. You cannot do that. Like, love will remain, a fight to let go, right? But then there's also at some point there's this coming together of both sides, and it's like we acquiesce to the fact that nope, we're gonna kill this guy who deserves to be killed. This kind of Dexter themed, sort of vigilantism and vengeance on the perpetrator of pain to him, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's the argument that's happening. But you were so eloquent in saying that, that's a testament to experience. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens from writing a bunch of songs, and you're totally right about that. That's something you can't learn outside of doing it. Again, like having that sort of gnosis, that sort of experiential knowledge of doing the thing a million times and writing a million songs and having some of them hit and having some of them not, and figuring out what works and what doesn't. And then also like tapping into the moment of inspiration and just letting it happen. And I was really impressed with all of your commentary. I thought you guys were very insightful and clearly using the noodle, man.
Well, thank you. Like, I appreciate you saying that. Like, we try and that's what we try and do. Like, we've got. I mean, Kyle and I have both been involved in music in some capacity for, like 20, 25 years now. I feel like while we don't consider ourselves experts by any stretch of the imagination, I feel that we have a degree of understanding that maybe a layperson doesn't. And when we're breaking down and analyzing and reacting to these songs and videos, that's how what we try and bring. We get people that go like, "Oh, I wish you wouldn't pause it. I wish you wouldn't pause it to talk about it. Like, I want you to." I was like, that's the whole point. Like, one, we kind of have to for YouTube stuff and reasons and whatever, but also like we don't just want to sit there and watch it and then talk for like 2 minutes and then that's it. That's nothing. That's cheap content. That's not, a reaction or anything. That's like we want to pause it and break it down and analyze it a bit and discuss it and have our theories and maybe our theories are off base at sometimes, but the whole point is that we're trying to think critically about it and to provide a degree of analysis and
anyone can sit there and go, that's a good song.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
sure,
man. Let's bring a bit extra, and it strikes up conversation. Keep coming, keep bringing on that we don't know shit. I love it. Bring it on.
Not only do you guys bring an analysis, but you also bring the human part of the reaction of the feeling right to it as well. Like, you get to witness you guys feeling something if you're feeling something in real time. I think that's awesome.
That's why we're doing our new series that we're starting as well. Like, we've started filming this new series. It's a twist on the reaction videos that we've been doing. It's going to be called Rockin' Round the World, and it's kicking off in 2025. And we found like this randomizer that just picks a random metal band from somewhere in the world, big, small, whatever. And we're trying to expand our horizons and find music and metal bands from countries that we maybe aren't as familiar with, and we filmed a bunch of episodes for it the other day, and we got like Spain, Colombia, Portugal, Germany, and Finland, I think, and they were all, there was like power metal and black metal and the one from Finland, they called themselves sniper metal, and everything was themed around like snipers and everything like that. And it was discovering these bands that are coming from a cultural background that we are less familiar with. So they're bringing, their own elements to it and their own, that we are, again, not as knowledgeable about, and learning and finding that something new and something different, something unique to what we're used to. Because we never want to become these people that, where our music taste like stagnates at 30 and that's all we ever listen to for the rest of our lives.
I would be willing to bet that pours over into the rest of your life too. That it's not just music that you're like that though. That's such an awesome to live life, man, is out of curiosity is what growth breeds. Or I'm sorry, curiosity breeds growth, right? Be curious about the world. And you say, you guys are on a really, really, really big island on the other side of the world, and I understand that. But even being in the States, like going over to Europe for me and seeing that culture firsthand, it's like we all live in sort of different worlds, man. And it's really cool to learn the differences that point to the similarities, right? Because we all have a different way of doing the same thing. We're all just being humans, and learning that stuff is eye-opening, and it helps you understand yourself better too. I love that's the motivation for you guys reaching out and doing what you're doing, is to try to expand your awareness of what fellow human is doing in the world.
And music, they talk about music being a universal language, and it truly is, and it's a great way, I think, for us to just continue to, like I say, expand our horizons a bit and just keep on top of something fresh and interesting, and never resting on, just because we don't just want to listen to the same Metallica and Slayer records for the rest of our lives, Like, there's a lot of good stuff there. Like, I'm not going to say that that's not a shot at those bands. It's just I need something fresh. I need something new all the time. And that's one of the reasons that, we just, again, like we do we want to share these experiences with people and the joy that we get from that, because it's like Kyle and I would be having these conversations about music that we have, whether they were on camera or not. And we're just, it's allowed us to, doing this has allowed us to reach out to lots of cool people from all across Australia and across the world, get to chat to people like yourself, like Waylon. I mean, we even got to chat with Neil Kay, who kind of was there for the origins of heavy metal back in the 70s in the UK throughout the clubs and everything. And like, I think we spent like 3.5 or 4 hours talking to Neil, because it just kept going and kept going and kept going.
So
the guys from Theftuous, who John used to be in Snot. He used to play bass for Snot. Now he's working with doing stuff with Theftuous, and Massey, who was in 1 Minute Silence. They kind of come together to do their new thing, and that's really cool. And we got to chatting to oh god, the names escape me now. Francesco from
they just had a tour too.
Oh, fuck, the name's gone now. The name's gone now. I'm so sorry. But like from, Flesh God Apocalypse. There we go.
Yes.
From Flesh God Apocalypse, and just, like we've got to chat to some really cool people from across the world, and you just get it. You get it. Like, music just is what you are. It is in your being, and that the fact that we get to share that love with a lot of these incredible people from all across the world is like, that's what it's all about. Like, we didn't start the YouTube channel to try and like get big off any of this or make it whatever. Like, it's about just sharing that love for music and that passion with people from all over the world, and chatting to the amazing people we have, including yourself, and just learning, just sharing those same conversations and realizing, like, it's the mentality is the same, the love is the same, and that's what we are enjoying most about it all.
I love it, man. I'm happy to be a part of it.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. We really hope you had a good time. If you did, please consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell down there. It helps the channel grow. We are still a fairly young channel, and we like to try and grow our audience all over the world. We do also, for those of you who are interested, have a Patreon. It's just a couple of bucks a month. At the moment, you get all the videos early and ad-free, but we are working on ways to increase the value of that and make it a bit more enticing. So don't forget to keep an eye out and check back on what's going on over there. Other than that, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.